First of all, I suppose the way to start, that I want to start this anyway, is remembering the words of a late friend of mine who only died in recent times. And he died in the year of his 108th birthday. Michael O'Connor from Muckross in Killarney. And I continuously, every time I'd meet him, which was very regularly, and he was driving his car until he was 104, living on his own, taking care of himself, a great man. But his philosophy in life was, Michael, everything is fine in moderation. Whether it's alcohol, whether it's all the other different things that a person wants to do in life, everything is fine in moderation. Gambling. Let it be quite clear. There is nothing in the world wrong with gambling. There is nothing in the world wrong with the people who own bookie shops, the people who run them, who work in them, who have gainful employment in them, the people who leave their place of work of an evening and go in and have a little bet in a bookie house, or go and have a drink and go betting at the same time and put on a little bit of money. There is nothing in the world wrong with it, if they remember Michael O'Connor and do it in moderation. And that would be the model of not just this, but everything else. And that's why I welcome this. I would like to consider this as government's answer to try and help ensure people who aren't exercising in moderation, that this legislation is to protect them, to help them, to secure them and their families, and protect them from themselves if they're not able to exercise moderation. We also have to be very careful that we don't want to demonise this industry. And I call it an industry because where I come from, say in County Kerry, I want to thank and compliment people like the great people, the committee, the company that run the Killarney races, and that have our racing festivals. And they have them in May, June, July, August and into September. The same in Listowel. We have the Glenbeigh races. All of these people who work at that, the gambling element of it is very important, and it's only a flutter. It might be a person putting on what they can afford, and that could be a few pence, a few euros, or it could be multiples of that if they're able to. But they should only be gambling and betting what they're able to afford to lose, because we always had the story there was no such thing as a bookie on a bicycle, because the bookie wins a lot more often than not. When I'm talking about bookies, of course, this is the new advent when it comes to gambling, unfortunately, and betting online. And people sitting at home or maybe in other places and going on their phone and a credit card and this, and it's a very dangerous combination. It was a fine thing when you had to go into, we'll say for instance, a very good friend of mine, Timmy and Cathy O'Leary from Cahir and Kenmare, who ran a bookie shop inside in Kenmare for decades. And of course they were able to exercise prudence with their customers and ensured that they were for the protection of their customers. And yes, they had their own people that used to come and have a flutter with them, but they ran what I'd call a respectable gambling, a respectable bookie office. And these were real bookies. These were people who would encourage maybe a person not to put on a bet if they thought that they were a little bit under the weather or not informed for betting, and they'd be out for their best interest in a very genuine way, because they didn't want them to part with money foolishly or anything like that. But unfortunately, this is no Timmy Leary. This is a different device. This has no monitor. This has no filter. This, if the credit card will back up what the person is willing to place, it could be on two horses out in Kentucky or somewhere in the United States of America at 3:30 in the morning, when a person might be a little bit intoxicated, and they might be betting what they had in their wages or their money into the house that week. And of course we have to be so protective of that and trying to ensure that we protect people from themselves, while at the same time not demonising the industry, because it's the same as the publicans. The finest people that we had in Ireland were the people who sold drink inside in public houses, because they did so in moderation. They minded their customers. They were careful of their customers. And then with the closure of pubs and what I would call the downturn in that way of life, What does that mean? There's no more measures. If people are drinking at home, it's not measured in the way it was measured by the publicans. The same thing with the bookies' offices. If you have individuals who know their customers, it's a lot better than this thing. And I certainly wouldn't be a fan of online betting, and any way it could be regulated, monitored, and all the protections that we can put in place to mind people, that is so important. And thank you for the opportunity of talking.